Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Hope the guys are all having a wonderful day. Today's upload is going to be a official snowfall forecast for the northeast. Even though this says east coast, I adjusted it to the northeast. And hopefully you enjoy these videos. I have one thing to address before I start this video. Actually, two things. First off, this forecast is not 100% right. There will be some flaws. Obviously, this isn't 100% accurate. I won't be giving you exact snowfall amounts like, say, Rochester, New York. You will be receiving 72.9 inches. No, I will be giving you range of snow, say, anywhere from 60 to 80. Another thing I want to address is that a viewer commented that my videos are getting redundant. You know, my explanation is getting very same. I talk about the El Nino, the Madoka El Nino, and then the NOAA outlook. I know, I realized, and you are right, but I do feel like if it's necessary to do that, because the viewer that is new and he wants to get something explained about how I make my forecasts, he needs to watch this, and instead of going back to my other videos, I have it right here for him. Also, I do feel like if it's just necessary for the video, but again, if you want to skip forward, you can. You're not obliged to watch this whole thing. You could just skip to the forecast part. I don't know exactly when it will be in the video, but you could just skip through the video until you reach it. Before we, however, get into this video, consider subscribing to my channel, consider liking the video. You may be wondering why to subscribe, why to like the video if you are new to my channel. Well, check out my channel, check out my other videos on this channel. If this channel suits your needs, subscribe. If you're an old returning viewer but still not subscribed and you like my videos, then all I'm saying is that keep it in the back of your mind that subscribing helps me out a lot. So, if you want to do that, feel free to do so. So the four factors that will be going into this video are the ENCO outlook, average snowfall map, analogs, my who will see the coldest fall video, and who will see the snowiest fall video. And those are the main four factors, and like the viewer said, this is redundant. So again, this will be very similar to most videos I have explanation-wise, but I feel like if it's very important to explain, and very important to make my forecast off of one consistent based evidence, not just jumping around like a jumping bean. So I feel like if it's necessary to do this. So again, if you don't like this, you could skip forward. But let's first talk about the average snowfall map. And since this is only for the states of, this forecast is only for the states of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. That's why we will be only focusing on these states here and ignore this rest. I already did a video on the Plains and Midwest. You could check that out. I will be doing one on the South and the West soon. But for now, it's just the Northeast. And as we see, the Northeast gets quite a bit of snow, especially right near the lakes. This is due to lake effect snow. You can see up to 120 inches of snow is possible during an average winter. And then just around northern Maine, northern New Hampshire, northern New Hampshire, and northern Vermont, we just see quite a bit of snow also as well. And then by Lake Erie, I'm fairly sure that is Lake Erie, guys. Correct me if I'm wrong. I always get these two mixed up. I think this is Lake Erie and that's Lake Ontario. So this is Lake Erie, and you can see also some lake effect snow affecting these snowfall totals. And this is by counties. These little boxes, these little cubes, those are counties. So pick out your county if you live in the Northeast, and if you don't, still pick out your county, look at this, and wait for my other video. But you still feel free to watch this video Still feel free to watch this video even if you live in the South, because it'll give you some feedback on what to expect in the South potentially. So this is how it looks like. We have a vague idea of what the average is, and we have a basis to start off with. Now we need to look at the ENC. I don't know what this arrow is doing right here, guys. I'm sorry about that. And so ENCO neutral is favored through July through September 2018. And what we care about is afterwards, what's after September for the winter months. Was an El Nino favored thereafter. So chances for an El Nino are near 70% during Northern Hemisphere winter 2018-2019. And I am also fairly confident that an El Nino will be forming. However, again, different strengths of El Niños impact the actual impacts of the El Nino, and also the types of El Nino. So there could be a completely different type of El Nino that may produce completely different type of impacts on the United States. So that is something you need to keep in the back of your mind. Just because an El Nino is favored doesn't necessarily mean it will be an El Nino like this, because this is your typical El Nino, and if you don't even know what an ENCO is, any of that garbage, any of those terms, this is all you need to know. An El Nino typical pattern looks something like this. Cooler, wetter conditions across the south, warmer, drier across the north. So yes, this would mean more snow for the south. However, that would not mean that the south would get more snow than the north. So let's say areas like Minneapolis are, during an El Nino winter, their average is around 50 inches, and during an El Nino, let's say they get around 45. Now let's go back to, say, Georgia and Atlanta. 2-3 inches is their average, possibly up to 4. And let's say this year with an El Nino, they get up to 6-7. And you can see Georgia, Atlanta is above average, while Minneapolis, Minnesota is below average. But Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnesota still gets above average snowfall as compared to Georgia. So those are two things to keep in mind. Now, what I was talking about when it comes to the variations of the different types of El Ninos. An El Nino, if you don't know, is measured by sea surface temperatures, which stand for SST, in the Pacific Ocean. And as you can see right here, in the Pacific Ocean, the warm temperatures indicate a El Nino, and the cooler than average temperatures indicate a La Nina. Right, what we have right here right now is an El Nino on this graph, and if you notice, the Pacific Ocean extends all the way from Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, areas like that. New Zealand's down here. All the way from those areas all the way to the coast of South America. And you can see it's more eastern-based rather than western or central-based. And now during an El Nino Madoka, which I'll explain what it is and what potential impacts it has, it's the El Nino Madoka is basically when the water is more central-based. The warm water is more central-based in the Pacific Ocean. Cooler water is right here. Cooler water is right by the coast. So this is not considered a La Nina just because the waters are cooler by the coast. It's still an El Nino because an overwhelmingly amount of waters are above average in the center. So, and you may be wondering, why am I assuming this year may be an El Nino Madoka? Well, we don't really even know whether an El Nino Madoka will happen or an El Nino will happen. Any of those two are as likely as the other one. So the El Nino Madoka is as likely as the El Nino, and the El Nino is as likely as the El Nino Madoka. So because the El Nino Madoka produces such huge difference in impacts on the United States, we need to take that in account, especially if it could occur equally as much as a regular El Nino. So that is very important. It is very important. So the reason why it may form this year, even it still has a 50-50 despite what I'm about to show you. This year, as you can see, this is the current SST, sea surface temperatures. It's still very disorganized. You can see some cooler waters, some warmer waters, and if we compare this definitely does look more like an El Nino Madoka, but that's not purely what I'm going off of. I'm also going off a couple other factors, but if we look south of Greenland, cooler waters, northeast, warmer waters, what do we have during an El Nino Madoka? The same exact pattern setting up. So that is a similarity that we have. Sorry about that. And then right now in the Pacific Ocean, it is basically just warm all throughout. It is more central-based, but it definitely isn't eastern-based or completely central-based by itself. So you can see right here, they're still warmer than average waters by South America. And here in El Nino Madoka, they're cooler, so that's something that doesn't agree. But we will just need to keep watching that and see what happens. I'm just saying that an El Nino Madoka has an equal chance of happening as an El Nino, and you may be wondering now, what are the differences between an El Nino and an El Nino Madoka? Well, there is no such thing as an El Nino Madoka pattern. However, what I did was took the years of an El Nino versus an El Nino Madoka and put them on a map where they are compared to average years of winter, and I just compared the temperatures differences, which places are above average and what places are below average. And as you can see, all these years mentioned down here are considered El Nino years. However, the catch is these were El Nino Madoka years and these were El Nino years. And the different two types are still considered El Nino. However, the El Nino Madoka has a completely different outcome. You can see that almost half the country I would even say more than half the country is below average, and then another third, or even another, a third of the 2/3 of the remaining half is average, and then just a little tiny bit, the third of the half is below or above average in terms of temperatures, and not even by that much. So you can see that is an El Nino Madoka pattern. However, now when we turn to a regular El Nino, you can see that it is a much different story. I would say that around 60% to 70% is above average, and then about 10 to 20% is around average, and then 5 to 10% is below average in temperatures. So that is a completely different outcome that could mean basically a lot of snow for you or basically no snow for you. And obviously in this forecast we are focusing on the northeast, so this would mean that during an El Nino Madoka, all these slides that I just went through, what I'm trying to say is with an El Nino Madoka, the northeast could see below average temperatures, which would produce more snow, and during a El Nino this would produce above average conditions in terms of temperatures, and that would produce less snow. Another thing that we need to look at in terms of the snowfall outlook for the northeast is the U.S. rainfall anomaly. So during an El Nino, this is an El Nino, you can see that it's wetter than normal across the west, and then kind of drier across the eastern half of the country, but the northeast is kind of split. Definitely not wet, it's just, I would say, slightly below average to around average in terms of U.S. rainfall anomalies. And then when we go to a El Nino Madoka, you can see that the northeast is basically all above average in terms of precip. So if it overlies above average precip with this cool air, yes, that would produce more snow for the northeast. So if you like snow and you want snow, you better want an El Nino Madoka, because that is your best bet at this point to producing a cold winter. Alright guys, so remember how I earlier said in a video that we will be looking at my 2 videos, and that was who will see the snowiest fall and who will see the coldest fall? Well, that was a mistake. I meant to say my winter outlook, because I realized that fall doesn't encompass the whole season. I don't know what I was thinking, guys. I'm sorry, but we will be just looking at my winter prediction, my most recent winter outlook. And as you can see, this is what I think will happen, that colder and snowier, especially towards 2019 in these areas, and warmer and drier, plus less snow in the northwest. So if I were to edit this now, this was made I think August 18th, 19th, 17th, something along those lines, I would probably maybe get rid of this lightest blue color and maybe just extend it further into the northeast, the darker blue color. So I would, I think the northeast should be in this darker blue color, but the rest of these areas should be just gone in white and average. And then the warmer / drier area, I'd probably extend somewhere, let me put on my pointer, somewhere to along here. And that is basically my winter outlook for factor part of this thing. And I almost did it there. My final reveal is right now, so get ready for it. Hold your horses, and right here, this is it. You can see that it's pretty messy, but I do think it does a fairly well job representing what the forecast will be. So, in the areas where you see these lighter bluish areas is around 20 to 40, even possibly 50 inches of snow. Then here it is around 40 to, I'm fairly sure it's 40 to 70 inches of snow. And you could see I didn't include all of Massachusetts due to the fact that I do think these parts will get some influence of the warm waters that are already in place that I showed you earlier, and that could introduce some warm air during the snowstorms, which could just turn it over to rain and not snow. So I do think in these areas 40 to 70, so a little bit above average. I do think that in these purple areas, it will be around 70 to 100 inches. I know that is a fairly large range, but I couldn't give you precise numbers. 70 to 100 areas. And then the pink areas are around 100 to 120, 30 inches. And then these red areas are 130 plus. And the reason why I say these red areas are such a high number is due to the fact of the lake effect. I will be doing a separate video on lake effect, but I will just quickly introduce this right now. I think that lake effect snow will be fairly vigorous this year due to the fact that these lakes are warmer than average, and during an El Nino pattern, if an El Nino pattern would form, not the El Nino Madoka, with an El Nino pattern, that would be warm air over warm water, and that would produce more lake effect. Even if an El Nino Madoka pattern would form, I do think it is still fairly likely chance of a above average lake effect snow season due to the fact that the lakes are above average in terms of temperatures. I do think that this year even whether an El Nino Madoka or El Nino happens, I do think they will be very active, and they will produce a lot of snow. And right here, you can see, right in these areas, these pinkish areas, you could see that is again 100 to around 120 inches, and that is basically based off the fact that Lake Erie will be also active. All the lakes will be active, so I think that Lake Ontario will be more active due to the fact that sometimes these bands form up and they could just blow for days and days and days, as we saw in November 2014, I think, in Buffalo. The southern part of Buffalo was just insanely hammered with, I'm not even sure, it was like 150, 140, 130 inches of snow. It was ridiculous, and I don't think that will happen. Hopefully it won't, but some similar events could be happening this year. That's all I'm going to say. That's why I introduced the lake effect snows machine into this. So generally, hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you learned something new. Consider subscribing to my channel, consider liking the video, and I'll see you all guys on the next episode.